Welcome back to the deep dive. If you are an intellectually curious learner, maybe you're prepping for a massive boardroom presentation, or maybe you're just trying to figure out how to get your teenager to listen to you, well, you are in exactly the right place.
You really are, yeah.
Because our mission today is straightforward. We are going to unlock the ultimate shortcut to getting what you want out of life, and we are doing it by exploring the counterintuitive science of giving other people what they want.
Which is such a fascinating angle.
Right. We're drawing on decades of human relations research, specifically the core principles laid out in Les Giblin's classic 1956 manual, How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People.
And, to set the stakes for this, we should really consider this massive foundational study conducted by the Carnegie Institute of Technology and Harvard University.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, it's wild. They analyzed the root causes of professional and personal achievement. And the result, a staggering 85% of your success in life is dictated entirely by your personality and your people skills.
Wow, 85%.
Exactly. Only 15% comes down to your actual technical knowledge. I mean, for every single person It is about validating their fundamental worth as a human being independent of their actions. You are signaling, I value your humanity, even when you make mistakes.
Ah, I see.
The paradox of human behavior is that no one responds to a moral straitjacket. The moment you stop demanding that someone change in order to earn your basic respect, you actually grant them the psychological safety required to change themselves.
That makes perfect sense. You refuse to validate the bad habit, but you relentlessly validate the human.
Exactly.
Which transitions us perfectly to the second A, approval. Acceptance is passive, it's a baseline, but approval is active. And it's not about handing out participation trophies or generic compliments. The real leverage comes from finding non-obvious, specific things to praise.
Yes, the power of redirecting a narrative through approval is immense. Take the case of a child psychologist who was dealing with an incorrigible young boy. The parents were just at their wits' end.
What was the boy doing?
They claimed the child had absolutely no redeeming qualities, was completely destructive, and constantly carved up the expensive furniture at home. The boy was receiving nothing but negative feedback, which only fueled his defiance.
He was a starving dog snapping at everyone.
Precisely. The psychologist didn't punish him further. Instead, he'd look at the behavior objectively. The boy liked to carve. So the psychologist bought the boy a proper, high-quality wood carving set and some soft wood.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Most importantly, he offered genuine approval for the boy's skill. He took the exact trait the boy was being scolded for and framed it as a talent.
And what was the result?
The shift in the boy's behavior was radical. He started cleaning his room and behaving cooperatively, completely unprompted. He desperately wanted to maintain the warm glow of that approval.
You change the label, you change the behavior. And the final A is appreciation. This operates on a slightly different wavelength. Appreciation is about treating people as distinct individuals rather than abstract categories.
Right, avoiding the generic labels.
The trap is dealing with someone as just the customer or the barista or the kids.
The etymology of the word is really helpful here. To appreciate means to raise in value. To depreciate means to lower in value. When you give someone the routine treatment like when a company sends a form letter starting with "Dear Valued Customer" instead of using a specific name, you're depreciating them. You are signaling to their ego that they are merely a replaceable unit in a mob.
Right, you're nobody special.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Recognizing individuality is what raises their value.
So, utilizing the AAA menu acceptance, approval, appreciation rebuilds a person's internal state over time. But we don't always have months to build a relationship. Sometimes you need to influence someone's immediate, in-the-moment actions. You need cooperation right now.
Which happens constantly in life.
The fascinating mechanism here is the mirror effect. People will almost always act out the exact roles we unconsciously assign to them through our own physical cues.
We constantly project attitudes, and human beings are biologically wired to reflect those attitudes back. The U.S. Navy actually partnered with Kenyon College to study this phenomenon using ship intercom.
Oh, I remember this.
They needed to find the most efficient tone of voice for transmitting commands in chaotic environments. What they discovered was a deeply ingrained, involuntary reflex. When a speaker shouted a question over the intercom, the person on the receiving end was physically compelled to shout their answer back. They literally couldn't help it.
Then the reverse was true, right?
Yes. Conversely, when the speaker used a soft, calm voice, the listener involuntarily lowered their own volume to respond.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if we apply that Navy study to our daily life, it reveals a very uncomfortable truth. When someone treats us rudely, a clerk, a colleague, a stranger on the street, 95% of the time, we unconsciously asked for it.
Ouch, yeah.
We approached the interaction with our mental fists clenched. We anticipated a fight, our posture became rigid, our tone became clipped, and we set a hostile stage. The other person simply picked up the script we handed them and read their lines.
We prejudge the interaction and create a self-fulfilling prophecy. But once you understand the mirror effect, you can weaponize it positively. You set the stage you want to play on. Conrad Hilton is a prime example of this.
The hotel magnate?
Yes. Before he was a global magnate, he set out to build his first million-dollar first-class hotel. But he only had $50,000 of his own money. In the early 20th century, that gap was just insurmountable.
So what did he do?
Hilton didn't approach investors with desperation. He projected absolute, unwavering confidence. He operated as if failure was the physical impossibility. That energy was infectious. The investors mirrored his absolute certainty and handed over the capital.
It's the physical feedback loop of belief. Frank Becker utilized the same loop in sales. He's failing, ready to quit his career entirely. He decided as a last resort to simply act enthusiastic.
Just fake it till you make it.
Exactly. He forced the physical behaviors, the posture, the energy, the vocal cadence. The profound discovery was that acting enthusiastic actually triggered genuine internal enthusiasm. And because of the mirror effect, his prospects caught that same enthusiasm.
The physical output changes the internal reality.
I think of the dairy store secretary who decided to test this on a miserable, freezing, rainy shopping day. Everyone in the store was grumpy, the clerks were overwhelmed and snapping at people.
We've all been in that store.
Right. She walked up to a chaotic counter, caught the eye of a highly stressed clerk, and offered a massive, deliberate, genuine smile. The clerk stopped, smiled back, and waited on her before anyone else. She hacked the environment just by changing her facial expression.
It demonstrates how malleable human interaction is when you control the physical cues. But this brings us to a complex pivot. Projecting a positive attitude works wonders for general cooperation. But what happens when you actually have to disagree with someone?
Oh, that's tough.
What happens when you need to change deeply held beliefs or win an argument?
This is where everything we just talked about gets flipped on its head. We just established that projecting your attitude loudly dictates the interaction. But when it comes to true verbal persuasion, the secret to changing a mind is actually talking much, much less. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes referred to the act of listening as white magic.
What's fascinating here is how fundamentally we misunderstand intelligence and persuasion. We assume the person with the sharpest logic and the most airtime wins. But consider Walt Whitman.
The poet?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was walking with a friend, stopped to engage a total stranger, and proceeded to monologue passionately for 20 straight minutes. The stranger barely uttered a single syllable.
Just listened.
Yeah. When they finally parted ways, Whitman turned to his friend and enthusiastically declared that the stranger was a highly intelligent man.
Why? Because the man offered Whitman his full attention. We associate a willingness to listen to us with profound intellect.
We absolutely do.
But the mechanics of persuasion go far beyond just flattering someone by letting them talk. There is a study by Yale psychologists regarding dental hygiene that completely shatters how we think about convincing people to change their habits. They took 3 groups of students and presented them with lectures on dental care.
And the structure of those presentations is the key here.
Exactly. Group 1 was hit with massive scare tactics. Gory photos of diseased gums, terrifying statistics about tooth decay, high-pressure warnings. Group 2 received a moderate warning. Group 3 received a low-pressure, purely factual presentation. No threats, no graphic images, just the calm, boring data.
Logically, you would assume the group subjected to the intense scare tactics would rush out to buy floss immediately. The fear should drive action.
But it didn't. A week later, the researchers measured the actual behavioral changes. The scare tactics completely failed. It was the students who received the low-pressure, factual appeal who drastically changed their dental habits.
To understand why, we really have to look at how the ego guards the brain. The ego acts like a bouncer standing at the door of the subconscious mind. When you attack someone with high-pressure logic, threats, or scare tactics, you wake up the bouncer.
And the bouncer shuts it down.
Exactly. The ego perceives a threat to its autonomy and slams the door shut. It creates massive cognitive dissonance, and the person shuts down to protect themselves. Your idea cannot enter their subconscious. To successfully plant an idea, you have to slip it past a relaxed bouncer.
This perfectly explains a massive 7-year study conducted by Professors Buss and Borden. They recorded and analyzed 10,000 actual arguments. They listened to UN delegates debating, taxi drivers arguing over fares, husbands and wives fighting.
A lot of data.
A ton of data. And the shocking conclusion was that professional debaters are actually terrible at changing people's minds in the real world. Door-to-door salesmen are infinitely more effective persuaders.
Which makes sense, because professional debaters are trained to ruthlessly dismantle the opponent's logic. But as we've established, attacking logic inherently attacks the ego. It corners the person. Salesmen, on the other hand, are explicitly trained to avoid waking the bouncer. They bypass the ego entirely.
One of the most elegant ways to keep that bouncer relaxed is by offering an emotional off-ramp. You have to let the other person save face. There is a brilliant case study of a department store clerk handling a tense return.
Oh, this is a great one.
A customer brought back a dress, aggressively demanding a refund and claiming she had never worn it. The clerk examined the fabric and could clearly see the distinctive marks of a dry cleaning tag. The customer was lying.
And the instinctual response for the clerk is to point out the dry cleaning marks, prove the customer is lying, and win the argument.
But winning the argument loses the interaction. If the clerk calls her a liar, the customer's ego is backed into a corner. She has to escalate the fight to protect her dignity. Instead, the clerk offered a brilliant loophole.
What'd she say?
She looked at the dress and said casually, I wonder if your husband might have accidentally sent this to the cleaners by mistake. That actually happened to me once.
It's a masterclass in ego management. The clerk provided a fictional villain, the husband.
Yep.
Instantly, the customer had an out. She didn't have to admit she was lying. She could just agree that her husband made a mistake. The store refused the return, the customer's dignity remained intact, and the ego stayed perfectly relaxed. Zero friction.
It's psychological Aikido. But as we look at this toolkit, another layer emerges. We've been dissecting one-on-one interactions, persuading the king, dealing with the clerk, talking to the customer. How do we scale this?
That's the real challenge.
Right. If you are running a department, leading a company, or trying to unite a family, how do you get 100% cooperation from a large group of people?
Scaling this requires a fundamental shift in how we ask for help. It comes down to the massive psychological difference between two specific directives, asking someone to help me do this versus asking them help me think about this.
That's a huge distinction.
When you just ask for physical labor, you're only renting their hands. You get baseline compliance. But when you ask for their ideas, you engage their ego. You get absolute dedication.
The industrial psychology backs this up beautifully. Consider the story of Robert C. Hood, who was running the Ansell Chemical Company. He was facing every manager's worst nightmare, a mandate to aggressively cut costs. Usually, management locks themselves in a room, decides where the cuts will happen, and forces the new, painful rules down the workers' throats. The workers resent it and fight the changes.
But Hood bypassed that entirely. He gathered his top operations people, laid out the financial reality, and essentially said, here is the problem we are facing. Help me think about how to solve it.
He didn't dictate, he solicited.
By asking them to generate the cost-cutting ideas themselves, they took psychological ownership of the solutions. They weren't executing a mandate, they were executing their own brilliant ideas. The result was a cost-cutting initiative so effective, the company profits actually jumped 40%.
It's like a vaudeville act. The brain and the body refuse to do a solo. They will only perform as a synchronized team. It is psychologically impossible for a human being to give you 100% of their physical effort unless they are also invited to contribute their mental effort.
McCormick and Company proved the exact same concept. In 1931, during the depths of the Depression, the company was struggling so badly, they had to issue grim layoff notices right before Christmas. It was a dark period, but management shifted gears and instituted what they called multiple management.
What did that look like?
It was a system of worker participation where employees actively contributed ideas, helped streamline workflows, and had a real voice in operations. By 1950, that identical company wasn't laying people off. They were handing out massive Christmas bonuses and paid winter vacations. By tapping into the brainpower of the workforce and feeding their egos with real responsibility, they completely revolutionized their corporate trajectory.
So, if you are listening to this right now, thinking about the conversations you have to navigate tomorrow, the toolkit is incredibly clear. First, look for the starving dogs. Feed the hungry egos around you with the AAA menu, offer fundamental acceptance, provide specific approval, and appreciate them as individuals.
Second, remember the mirror effect. Set the stage you want to play on, project confident, calm energy, and let them reflect it back.
Third, utilize the white magic of listening. When you need to persuade, don't wake the bouncer with high-pressure logic. Keep the ego relaxed, offer an emotional off-ramp so they can save face, and let the facts do the work.
And finally, when you need a team to rally, whether it's an executive board or your kids cleaning the garage, don't just ask for their labor. Ask them to help you think about the problem.
So what does this all mean? It means the murky, frustrating landscape of human interaction is actually remarkably predictable once you stop fighting human nature and start working with it. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive establishing that you get what you want by relentlessly feeding the egos of others, helping them feel important, and ensuring their dignity is protected. But what happens to your ego in this process?
It's the ultimate paradox of human relations.
If you are constantly prioritizing the validation of everyone else, constantly making sure their faces are saved and their ideas are elevated, does that diminish your own sense of self? Does it make you invisible? Or is it possible that the highest, most bulletproof form of self-esteem is actually forged when you stop needing validation from the room and instead become the source of validation for everyone else? Think about that the next time you walk into a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
You aren't banging on the glass of a vending machine anymore. You hold the keys.